Hello and welcome to NARC Live on Wednesday the 24th of November 2021, coming to you live from Norfolk on the east coast of England with Tammy M0TC.
Hello.
And me, David G7RP. Great to see you. On tonight's show, we find out all about NARC's Demolition Gang with Sonny M0SYW and Paul G4ZBA. We take a close look at this fantastic stereo microscope which is perfect for electronic assembly. And we find out what on earth is this. Now, we've had weeks of having lots of entries, and really, but this week we've only had a few. So if you think you know what this is, we think it's flawed a few of you, then please don't feel afraid to enter your answers either on BATC or on Facebook, and we'll reveal all at the end and tell you what it is in a few minutes' time. So what on earth is that? But first, I had a few emails, and the first comes from Steve, G4GHO, and he says, this is a bit of a long shot, but I wonder if you could pose a couple of questions to the club members on Wednesday. Firstly, we moved to Norwich in May 2017 to a new build on the old cricket ground in Lakenham. The garden topsoil was a sea of mud and full of rocks, so we set about digging it over. We found loads of fragments of clay pipe stems, but only one pipe bowl, and pottery shards which seemingly originated from ordinary domestic china, etc. The soil had perhaps been shifted several times during the build, but was probably locally sourced. And what Steve says is, I wondered if there were any amateur historians in the group who might be able to shed a light on the origins of this. Look at that. That looks like a real hoard.
Yeah, that blue stuff, that's quite a old traditional pattern, isn't it? I
Yeah,
can't remember what it's
I wonder
called
what
now.
the age is. I mean, you like old fossils and things, don't you? Quite like me, I think. Have you got any ideas? See, our guests are being rude there in the corner. I shall ignore them. Looks like a bit of a toilet in the top right, look. Anyway, so if any of you, though, are interested in this sort of thing, and you can give Steve a hand to identify any of this, otherwise he's going to have to go to the Antiques Roadshow when it's next in the area, I guess. But no, it does look interesting, doesn't it? Fancy finding that in your garden.
Yeah.
And then secondly, Steve says that I've noticed several vehicle registration plates with a G4 and G3 prefix locally. And I wondered if there may be any reason for the apparently abnormally large proportion of these. The vehicles are all relatively recent and the drivers seem too young to hold the relevant licence. I asked one driver once and he said it was his dad's car, but he had no idea about amateur radio. So he should have recorded the registrations and looked them up, he said. So, have you noticed in Norfolk an unusually large amount of registration? I think of two NARC members who've got them. There's Paul,
I
G3VPT,
have seen quite a few
isn't there?
recently, I must say,
Have
as
you?
well. G3s and G4s, yeah.
But didn't you say earlier you'd seen a G3?
I saw a car, yeah.
And it was just G3?
It was G3 was the registration number. I didn't know you could even have a registration number.
No,
like that.
G3. I bet that cost a pretty penny.
Probably.
So anyway, if any of you got any idea, I mean, is it just because we've got lots of radio amateurs in this area?
It may just be completely innocent that people have kept the registration number from an old car.
I must admit, I haven't noticed anything. I don't get out much compared to you. But anyway, if you've noticed that lots of G3 and G4 and other registrations on there. So I was going to say that I've got Paul G3VPT and Malcolm G3PDH. I know they've got number plates. And there may be others of you as well who've got them. But anyway, it's quite interesting. So thank you very much, Steve, for your letter. Hopefully we'll get some responses either to the old fossils or the old crockery and stuff like that, or the registration plates. Now, an email and a picture of this from Warwick Barnes. Now, I think, Warwick, the only call sign I have for you is 2E0WOS. So if you have upgraded to an M0 since then, I apologise if I've got that wrong. Anyway, he said he saw this and he thought it might entertain us. Now, this looks, at first I thought it was like one of those space robot things, but it's the ultimate direction finding equipment. It's called the MP007 Portable Direction Finding System. It's compact and extremely precise. And the RNS stands for Roden Schwartz, as you can see in the bottom right. Now, I'm afraid that's wonderful equipment, but anything with that name on, it's a bit like saying...
I've never heard of it.
Oh, it's a very top... Name me a big name of jewellery and things like that and gold. What would be a top name?
I don't know.
Because I never buy you any. Argos. No, it's not Argos, no. Anyway, this is the top equipment. And actually, I remember Mark Ribbons buying something like this direction finder, that little grey box in the one on the right, from the sale they had at Baldock when the Ofcom sold a lot of equipment from there. And he had one of these because he brought one to a fox hunt. But this would be the ultimate. But I wager, and I haven't looked it up, I reckon that is in the tens of thousands, possibly even more. And poor old Warwick says he might be able to afford the Pele case mounted on a rucksack frame, the empty one. But anyway, thank you for sending it, because it is interesting. Look at the stuff in there. That would help you win the fox hunt. So if you're serious and you've just won the lottery, then maybe you'd like to buy one of those. Wonderful stuff. Thank you very much for sending that to us, Warwick. Next, I've heard from Les, G0DFC, and he's written to us to let us know that the MX0WRR Waveney radio station, which was launched at the Brockdish Heritage Museum, you may remember actually we ran a foundation course from there at the same time to help them there get used to it. Well, anyway, that's now moved to the Norfolk Tank Museum at Fawncett St Peter. It was a move that was mutually agreed by all parties and which is thought to better suit the aims of the radio station. The Tank Museum is now closed to the public until next spring, but volunteers are welcome. They meet on Wednesdays from around midday and are currently doing a complete refurbishment of the radio room for next year, where there are lots of military and vintage radios to move around, to display and get them on air. So if you feel like volunteering for something like that to help, if you're interested particularly in some of the older radios, then you can contact Les G0DFC either via QRZ, or you can contact him via us and we'll forward your emails on to him. Now,
I just googled the road in Schwartz.
Oh, did you really?
And it says price on request.
Oh, I think you and I find that anything that's price on request,
you can't afford it.
You can't afford it. Yeah, someone sort of said, I was looking at houses around here, and I told them I was saying it was this house with a swimming pool, and I looked around, and it's not the house I bought in the end, and I went there and I asked them, because quite innocently, how much does a swimming pool cost to run? This is to the owners of the house. And they said to me, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. And honestly to God, and they were trying to sell me their house. And from that moment on, I thought, better not say that, they might be watching. Anyway, that's why I didn't buy your house, all right? Because you said something like that to me. Anyway, now we've got one more bit of news for you, and then I'm going to make my way effortlessly to the other side of the studio where we've set up a special camera to show you something. But first we want to tell you about something. Now, you know, we quite often talk about Morse code in this club, and we've got a lot of people who spend a lot of time, led by Roger, I think, but lots of other people who are giving all sorts of levels of training in Morse. But did you know that very shortly you will be able to order a pizza from a company called Papa John's, who are quite a big pizza company, by Morse code? I saw this on the Radio Society of Great Britain's social media page. Look at this. And I thought, is this a wind-up? Is this April the 1st? No. And it says it's available from the 28th of November 2021. Pizza lovers can transport themselves back in time. See, back in time. It's not my words. By ordering their Papa John's treats through dashes and dots. They'll simply need to sign up at that address there. Now at the bottom we've made it a bit bigger for you if you're watching this on a small device, a phone or something. Have a look at that. It's genuine, I promise you. I've entered, maybe you'd like to enter, and I've also seen someone I follow on Twitter has got his Morse code key to do this, and I think you somehow connect that to your phone and you'll be at enter, and if you can order your pizza by Morse.
Really?
I mean, Roger,
if they knew what they were talking about there, they put dits and dars there, wouldn't they?
Well, I know. Well, yes, but Roger and Malcolm and Jim and everybody's been trying to get us to do this. This could be the way of getting people into Morse code. Look, it's a complimentary Morse code kit, and you can order yourselves a free Call of Duty bundle, including one large pizza, a classic, something like that. Anyway, that is true, all right? We're not making it up. So if you have ever fancied ordering a pizza by Morse code, that's the answer. Is Tammy going to go into it, are you?
I'm just going to have a look on their website.
All right, that is genuine. Anyway, papajohnsmorsecode.co.uk/win, and you can apply for a Morse key. We could have more Morse keys in this club suddenly than they ever thought possible. Now, while I effortlessly remove my microphone because I need to walk to the other side of the studio. We didn't think about this, do we? Can you put that slide back on? All right.
Well, should it just
if you
look
turn
at the
my
little
mic
people
down and I'll let you fill in.
So
well, no, because we'll need to do that on the way back. And I'll come and show you in a moment what we're going to talk about.
You have to stop. I've turned your microphone down now, so you have to stop talking.
All right.
What am I talking about? Shall I just talk about the... Oh, I'll fill, shall I?
Yeah.
I'll just talk about all the comments we've had on Facebook then, shall I?
Oh, yeah, okay.
No, I better turn your microphone up over there so we can talk to you. Tom, G4ZBA says, yes, seen lots of G4 XXX number plates, no aerials, however. So, and Tom also said that he reckons that's 50k plus, that thing.
I would have thought so.
Yeah.
Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, I can.
I'm in front of another mic now. So.
Yeah. And, oh, let's have a look. Roy Reed says he's seen also lots of G3 and G4 registration plates to non-amateurs. Neil Baz, G4ZBA, normally in Bungay, checking in from the, what does that say, DV's, Wiltshire. And Paul, G3VPT, he said, hi all, no, not expensive, mine cost £420, which included the £40 changeover. The G1 would cost over £1,000.
So if you've got a G4 call sign then, and he's G3VPT, isn't he?
Yeah.
Good, oh, okay, Paul. Well, and also, if at your time of life and my time of life, it stops us forgetting what a call sign is. Just have a look out the window, there's your car, and a reminder. All right, brilliant. Thank you very much. Keep those tales coming in. Whether you think there's more call signs on car number plates in this area than normal.
People can hear you but see me. It's weird.
Okay, all right. Well, do you want to show us what we're looking at here now? I hope you can see.
I can't see your head. No.
That's a good thing. Hello, I'm over here in the studio now. We've set up this thing here. Hopefully, if you can see my hands, you can see this is quite a biggish piece of equipment. It's a microscope, although it's what's called a stereo microscope because it's got two eyepieces. And one of the great advantages of that is if you're doing things underneath it, you can see you've got feeling of depth. It's a bit like if you shut one eye, you can't always tell. If you try and solder, for example, one eye, you can't see and feel quite the same way. So this is one of the perfect things about this. We've also got a camera in the top. You can just see this. If I use my finger there, this is a little camera that comes with it, an HDMI output, and Tammy's going to show you the pictures from that in a moment. But I mean, I can look through here. I've got one of our little circuit boards here we use at work. This is called a ground signal if you're interested in such things. I'm going to have a look down there now. Actually, I have to take my glasses off. And so, Tammy, can you show the pictures of this?
I can.
Now, hopefully you can see that as well as I can see at home. This is very small stuff. This
slightly blurred, actually, on our screen at the moment.
Well, this is where the difficulty might be. So I can't see a monitor. This was actually, a flaw in our plan.
You can read the pic.
Can you? Is that better or worse?
Well, it's just zooming in and out. You need to twist the focus on the camera.
Okay, yeah. All right, well, it's good. I think you get the idea at home. I don't want to upset it completely because I haven't got a monitor in front of me to see because we're at the other end of the studio. But the point about this is really, if you like doing assembly and you really want something better than a magnifier, this could be the perfect answer. And I think something like this, when I saw this, and I must actually give credit here to M0SYW, who's Dan McGraw. He's one of CamHam's, and he gave a great talk and did a video on the RSGB convention. And he was using one of these, and after his video and talk, I was just chatting to him and just asking, you know, this is a really nice bit of kit to have at home, must have cost a fortune, and he said, well, not really. So this cost me, this exact one, was £262. Now, I know that's a lot of money, but if you were here and could feel and see this, it's mostly made of aluminium. It's so brilliantly made, and I think, frankly, a fraction of what it would cost industrially if you were to buy something like this. It's normally out of the pocket area of an amateur. So it's £262, but look at what you can do with it. We have got this zoom feature. So if I can bring it up, you can see how dirty my fingers are now, probably. Yeah,
well, let's just go that focus for us now. You see?
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm trying to see it. Well, I haven't got a monitor. That was a flaw in our argument, I think. Never mind. Hopefully you get an idea. This is actually a penny. I'll put a penny here for scale, so you can see what sort of detail you can see. There we are. Can you got that roughly in the middle of the screen, Tammy?
Yeah, that's not quite in focus, but we can see it.
Now, actually, Tammy, have you got a £20 note that I can show underneath? Because that looks really good.
Does it?
Have you got one handy?
No.
You do trust me with a £20 note, don't you?
Funny.
Okay. All right. Anyway, you get the idea at home. The output from the little camera up here. If we could just show the microscope again, Tammy, is an HDMI lead. So this will plug into a normal monitor or a television if you've got one. You get a power supply with it as well. That just plugs into here. And as I can't stress enough how beautifully made it is. Everything pretty much is metal. Even the camera comes in metal. And I think the camera's probably worth £100 or so of it. And we've just plugged it straight into our video mixer here. So if you've ever looked for a device like this, it came from AliExpress. So it did come from China, but it came properly paid with the VAT and tax paid beforehand. £260, that's what it cost. Landed, that's what cost it arrived here. And if you want specific details of this listing, then just drop me an email to the usual address, radio@dcpmicro.com, and I'll send you a link for this exact item if you've ever wanted to do some sort of serious close-up work on electronics or other things as well, or close-ups of £20 notes that your wife might give you. I'm not being so lucky. Anyway, Tammy, back to you for Little People.
Little People, okay. Let's go straight to the Little People then. Here's the Little People for this week. I thought you'd like this one.
I'll come back to the...
It's a rock climber circuit board.
Oh, cool. Better put my mic on.
Sorry, we can still just about hear you. So I thought you'd like that. Using all the capacitors and things to climb up the board.
Didn't you have something once with a motherboard and all I did was try and identify the chips?
Yeah,
Isn't
I think
right?
so, yeah.
I'm going to go hopefully you can hear me now.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that is good, isn't it? See those little 4-pin devices down there, they're probably opto-isolators because there's not many 4-pin devices.
Oh, wicked.
Bit geeky, but there we are. Lovely job. Thank you very much. It's miniature-calendar.com. If you've been looking at that at home and you'd like to have a look, they have a different picture every day. Thank you. Back in the proper hot seat.
Back in the groove.
So let's have a look. Have we got any answers firstly online to anybody who thought that would be?
No, I don't think anybody has actually answered about the thing online.
Anybody know what that is? I mean, at first...
Oh, I missed one there about the registrations. Ray says he's got his call sign G3XLG on his Jeep.
Thank you, Ray. Good. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Let's go to
thank you for that. Keep those stories coming in on number plates as well if you've got them. But let's now go look at what on earth is this. Now, when I saw this, the person who sent it to me said, before I send you the answer, do you know what this is? And I thought it was a juicer. The sort of thing.
Do you know, that's what my dad thought it was.
Did he?
Yeah, he did.
It's the sort of thing you put a tomato or a orange or something like that in and get the juice out. But he said, no, that's already been done. That was the answer. So before I tell you what it is, let's have a look at what some of you thought. We only had 3 entries this week compared to about 20 the week before. Simon M0SYW said, the object mentioned on What on Earth is fixed to a plastic bottle and hung in a tree to form a trap for catching wasps, bees or hornets. Nev M0NFY says, I'm pretty sure this week's item is not a sewing machine. I think you might be right. But we'll see.
Are we going to have a sewing machine one week just for Nev?
I have no idea. He has, but one week he's going to be right, isn't he? He says, could it be a cable tidy perhaps? I could see that just about. Yeah, imagine wrapping wire around the back bit of that. On the one on the picture on the left. And Tom G8XQD says, looks like the retainer for protective netting suspended over your strawberry plants. Okay. Or, he says, is it a couple of sombreros on a bed of grey match heads? Tom, you've got a good imagination.
There's one more on Facebook. Andy, M0NKR, says, is it an insert to a box for cables to pull out?
Yes.
Like network boxes.
Yes, those cardboard boxes. Good one, Andy. I think that is a possibility, isn't it? Where you see the cable come out, it's to stop it getting all snarled up, isn't it, inside?
I don't know what it's for, actually.
Yeah. No, well, I'm saying that's what Andy's talking about. The sort of thing you see in a cardboard network cable box. But anyway, let's find out what it is. We have a picture. So what on earth was that?
It was a wasp trap.
Look at that. So they've drilled a hole in the side of the bottle. I guess the wasps go in. Anyway, I'll read the answer.
I suppose you leave a little bit of, like, because the Coke is sweet, isn't it?
Yes.
They go in for the Coke then. Then they can't get out.
Oh, well, M0SYW, John, he sent us this picture, and he says, the object is used to make a wasp trap. You cut a cross in the side of a 2-litre bottle and push it in. Add fruit juice that attracts the wasps, and they fly in, but they can't get out. There's even a little spike where you can add a piece of meat or cat food, which the wasps also like, he says. That was a good one.
Because wasps are carnivores, aren't they?
Apparently, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we once studied one, didn't we, outside?
I did. I took a very fascinating video of a wasp eating a fly.
Yeah.
And it sounds revolting, but it was so fascinating.
Yeah, clever stuff, nature, isn't it? Anyway, there we are. Thank you very much, John, for sending that. It is a wasp trap. Only one person got that right, really. I thought that was really good. So, if that foxed you, what about this week? What on earth is this? It's one from one of our members. He said it's from his workshop, and that's the only clue I have. And although it's nice, I know, he sent this without telling me what it was. So we're in as much of the dark as you. If you send us one of these, it's lovely though if you can tell us what it is and send a picture as well of it in use, because then we can tie the two together. Obviously we don't tell everybody at the beginning. So what on earth do you think this is? Have you got any idea? I think I've got an idea what it might be.
I've got an idea as well. I'm not going to tell you.
No, we mustn't say it to you at home, all right? So if you know what this is, have a good look. This will be on our Facebook page and on our website and on our newsletter this weekend. Let us know by Wednesday, next Wednesday, 3 o'clock at the absolute latest, please. Will really help us. Good, thank you very much. So let's just have a quick look now at what's happening at our club next week. On Sunday at 7 o'clock, it's GB2RS News on GB3MB repeater. On Monday, the 29th of November, at 7:30, we've got the Monday Night Net, this week hosted by Tim M1MIT. And at 8:30, the 80-metre CW net on 3.543 megahertz. And next Wednesday, here on NARC Live, Ian White, GM3 SEK, returns with advice on how we can clean up and sort out our shack. I reckon that's a good time of year to do it when we're all going to be inside of it because the weather's not quite so good. Yep. That's what's happening this Wednesday. Plus, of course, all the regulars. What on earth is this? Don't forget to let us have your answers, your questions. And also, if you've got a what on earth is this, by the way, picture of something, please send us 2 pictures on the same email if you can. Helps us put them together. Tell us what it is. Send us a picture of it without showing what it is, and then one with it, what it is, and send it to us, and we'll include it in a future show. And also, don't forget the club's card, which we're very happy to send to people. We send on average 1 or 2 of these a week out. This we will send to anybody at all. Don't have to be radio amateurs, don't have to be a member of the club or anything like that. And we're very, very happy to send them to anybody if it cheers them up. Just let us know all your news and views and everything else to that email address at the bottom of your screen now, radio@dcpmicro.com. And if you can let us know by Wednesdays at 3 o'clock, the latest, we'll try and include it on that week's show. Now, it's time for our main event, and we've got 2 guests in the wings standing by to come and tell you all about the thing we call the Demolition Crew. Well, the Demolition Crew, we're going to find out exactly why it's called that, but it's not really what they do. They help lots of people. And since I think it's fair to say that Sonny and Paul and others, of course, have always helped other club members get their aerials up and do all sorts of things like that. But I think it's fair to say that particularly since the pandemic, when people have needed and wanted to get on the air even more, when it's been safe to do so, Sonny and Paul and their colleagues and friends as well have really stepped up to the mark and helped them. And we thought this would be a great opportunity to find out the story behind some of the things that they've done and how they go about it and the sort of good things and maybe more challenging things they've found. So it's lovely to welcome to NARC Live both to Sonny and Paul. Good evening, guys.
Hello. Good evening, good evening.
Oh, I need to put an earpiece in. That's why I can't hear them.
Might help, David.
Sorry. You talk away to them, Tammy.
I mean, I'm tiring him already. He can't even hear me. That's great, isn't it?
I didn't hear any of that, so if you were rude about me, then I wouldn't know. I'm just clipping.
Oh, that's a shame. You're a very nice gentleman, David.
Oh, I'm sure that's what you said a minute ago. So, guys, I know you're very modest and you're not doing this for the recognition of things, but it would be nice to know the story behind what you do and how you started it. As I said, you've both been the sort of people to step up to the mark and help people over the years, but it has been particularly, hasn't it, in the last you know, year and 3/4 or whatever since COVID that you've tried to get people on the air. So I'm going to hand over to you now. You've got your own slides. We've also got a couple of videos we'll play later. As always, though, on NARC Live, if you've got questions for Sonny or Paul, let us have them at any time during or immediately afterwards, and we'll be very happy to put it to them. Or if you've just got thanks, if they've done something for you, or if you've got a request maybe for them to help you, then let us have them either on Facebook or on BATC. But now I'm going to hand the evening back to Sonny and Paul to tell us all about the Demolition Crew.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. What we'll do is we'll just go, we'll do a little bit of an introduction as to Paul and then myself and then sort of how we became, and then we'll go on to the Destruction Crew element just to sort of really round things out. So slides whenever you're ready, Tammy, and I'll hand over to Paul.
Right. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Really, under the guise of getting to know you as well as the Destruction Crew, I put together a couple of busy slides, of which I'll whiz through, just to sort of highlight who I am and what I've done. Some people know, some people don't. I've lived in Norwich all my life. I was apprenticed at Lawrence Scott Electromotors in '75 for 4 years, and went off to Norwich City College doing me HND. At the same time, roughly around about '78, I joined the Royal Anglian Army Reserve, the old-fashioned TA as an infantryman. I then did my 4 years and I finished my college work and decided I didn't really want to work in a factory for 40 years. And BT were just changing from the GPO to BT at the time. So on a Friday of 1 week, I finished my apprenticeship and saw an advert in the newspaper saying that BT were looking for people. Wrote to them, had an interview, and they told me to start the following Monday. Now, when I arrived there, one of the chaps on the desk, one of the engineering managers, who introduced me at the time, said, "I see you're in the TA." He says, "You want to drop that infantry business and join the Royal Signals now that you're a telecoms man." So what you've got here is a pretty busy slide, really. And on the left-hand side are my career moves within BT, and pretty much matched at the same time as my Royal Signals career, which sort of followed through really in the same way. So I'll sort of thrash through it really quite quickly. But in 1980, I joined BT as a T2B. Now that's the sort of lowest of the engineering grades at the time in Norwich Main Exchange, and I transferred across on the right-hand side there to the Royal Signals from the infantry. In '82, by the time I'd done a bit more training, and so they sent me off to college to do some. There was all sorts of college work all the way through the 40 years of both BT and with the Royal Signals. It was a constant education, really, which is really why I put it there, because it had a big influence on my life. I became a T2A, an alignment, great job, and I was working in the city to start with. At the same time, I'd done my 2 years from 80 to 82, and as a technician in the Royal Signals, every technician can be a sergeant. It's not like you're in dead man's shoes, where as a lineman or a radioman or a powerman, you have to wait for a job vacancy to come up, which meant the promotion prospects were really quite poor. As you can see, the promotion prospects weren't poor as a technician, but you did have to put the time in and do the courses, the technical courses and the military courses. So 82, off I went and did my T3 technician's course and my junior NCO cadre course, and became a Lance Corporal. And it then goes on. I carried on in BT another 2 years. Every 2 years, BT moves you around. So I ended up in another part of Norwich, on the county side, Norwich North, where I live now, and Cossey. As a couple of years there, I'd done my corporal's course and became a T2 technician. This is all based at Norwich, in the TA centre at Norwich, 36 Signal Regiment, and we had trunk communications, trunk comms care. Rather than point-to-point stuff, everything we did was trunk comms. Started off with Bruin, and then Clansman, and then Ptarmigan, and then Yermux, Bowman, and Cormorant in the end, by the time I got down to retiring 40 years later. So I've seen an awful lot of broadband technical equipment and looked after it at various levels. From about 88 onwards, I was starting to manage people and kit. So 86, 88, lineman again. 1990 was the big change for me, really. I came off the TUNT list, which has become a senior engineer, really, technical officer, which was great. And I took up a job in Norwich Television Switching Centre. But that in itself was very interesting. That's the old Norwich D repeater station. And most people know very little about, you know, the core network of BT. But BT provided music circuits, vision circuits, all sorts of contribution, distribution for Anglia TV, the BBC, St Catherine's, Anglia House, Taggleston, and we've looked after all of the comms from London to the studios and back to the transmitter site. That was a double shift job, so I was working days and nights, and we were on call as well. So that was a fairly busy time. It was lucrative, but it was busy. And at the same time, by this point, I was I'd done my T1 course, Tech Sergeant at Norwich TA Centre. I'd pretty much outgrown it by then, and decided I'd go for the next job up, Staff Sergeant and Foreman of Signals at the Squadron Headquarters at Cambridge. And I got the job in 88, done all my courses, and off I went. 95, went across to Stoke-Holy Cross and Winterton. At Stoke-Holy Cross, I was working on the main trunk radio systems with Roger Nunn and Chris Black and one or two others. And that was really interesting as well. Learned a lot, lots of courses, lots of radio work. And had several years working at Stoke-Holy Cross and Taggleston, and that was great. I also worked at Winterton on the submarine cable systems. So we got two big cable systems, one UK-Germany 5 submarine cable, and Netherlands 14 point-to-point fibre-only cable. And they were fairly busy, and at the time they were putting the starting to do the wind farms, and they were forever dragging anchors on boats and damaging the subsea cables, and that was costing. We were making a fortune because we were being called out constantly, but that was costing BT an absolute mint. In the end, they decided to hand the whole cable over, the UK-Germany cable over to Cable and Wireless. 2000, I promoted, probably foolishly, to an engineering manager, area engineer, and at the same time I was commissioned in the Army from having been I was a squadron foreman as a staff sergeant, 95 warrant officer, class 2, foreman of signals, promoted down to Ilford, the regimental headquarters, and then in 2000 I was commissioned, went off to Sandhurst, did my commissioning courses, and it was Captain TOT in charge of equipment and equipment management and the technical training of technicians within the regiment. A whole host of 2000, 2002, right through to 2008 is engineering manager with different teams. Teams from field frames teams in the exchange, transmission teams, private services teams, a whole host of different stuff. By this point, 2002, I decided to spread out a bit more and go from the regiment that I'd always served with, 36th Signal Regiment, East Anglian Regiment, to a brigade headquarters, 2 Brigade, and as an SO3 staff officer, G6 in charge of equipment support and TELS, so that's support to the brigade. We had 13 regiments at that stage. It was very busy. I was based in Corsham in Wiltshire, so that was every other weekend and an awful lot of days during the week. So that was a fairly big commitment. From then on, the commitment was fairly high, actually. Once I was down at the brigade, Corsham particularly, very interesting place. Then, unfortunately, in 2010, I lost my wife. She died very suddenly of cancer, and it had a massive effect on me. And BT were terrible, and the Army were great. So I pretty much carried on and was promoted in the Army to Major. 2008, I was promoted. I carried on as a Major in 2 Brigade. But BT was dreadful, and unfortunately, I just couldn't carry on as a manager. So I decided to take demotion. I had a career of promotion, decided to take a demotion. And the demotion dropped me. I asked to go back down to the team that I was managing, which is never an easy thing to do. Back to the private services team. So I was one of 20 or so technical officers again, and I did take a bit of stick over that. But one of the great things was I'd pretty much met Sonny by then. It was an absolute delight to work with, and became very good friends. And I became Sonny's boy. You know, I went back from being a manager for 10 years or so. So, of course, I was out of touch with the real engineering practices, and I became Sonny's trainee. So he spent lots of time bringing me up to speed, and I did enjoy it. pretty much coming across 2012. I was still Major TOT. I went across to Specialist Group Royal Signals in Blandford as the Technical Selection SO2, Staff Officer Class 2, in charge of technical selection for a specialist group, and that was really, really interesting. Selecting degree candidates pretty much to come in direct commission as captains to serve for 3 years and then go back to industry. And that was a very good program for the military and for industry as well. It worked really well. And I pretty much carried on doing that until I retired in 2018. I took the money and ran from BT in 2016. So I've been a gentleman of leisure from then on. Over to you, Sonny.
Can I just, Paul, I don't want to interrupt your flow, but can I just ask, because I'm sure a lot of people will want to know as well as me, how do you do a job like BT and then at the same time give so much and become even a major in the Royal Signals? How does that work in proportional time spent on each?
Well, I think what it does, it means that your home life suffers, David. Unfortunately, I had a very understanding wife who was from an RAF family. And her father and grandfather were both RAF, and they did an awful lot of, their life was full of duty and service to the country. So she understood and was very understanding. But pretty much I do Monday to Friday, Monday to sort of, in the early days, Monday to Friday for BT, and then Friday to Sunday for the Army. And that was every other weekend, probably 2 months a year. And various operations and exercises throughout the time as well. Wow. I probably went to 15 or 20 countries as well. I had a month in Greenland. I did 2 US-UK exchange tours, twice to the Falklands, every European country. I've been pretty much everywhere. So it's a hell of a commitment.
I was just going to say that. That's a word I was going to use. What a commitment that is.
Yeah, you also get an understanding family, though. You really do.
You also get a joint corporate allowance from BT. They're happy for you to be in the reserves. So Paul had a lot of time.
I got a lot of time off. I pretty much did 50-50 in the end. Once I was a major and working down at the brigade headquarters, I was doing probably 3 days BT and 4 days Army for about 10 years.
Well, thank you for the service that you gave in both the industry, the BT and Royal Signals. Anyway, over to you, Sonny.
Yeah, thanks very much. Obviously, Paul has had 40 years. I've had 14 so far, so I'm only a quarter of the way through, and I'm mere but a boy, which means that Paul doesn't listen to me more often than not. And he'll deny that completely, and he's wagging his finger on the screen as I can see at this second in time. So just a quick thing about my history. I joined Openreach as it was. It had been Openreach for a few years then. Maybe 2 or 3, as an apprentice in Broadlands. So I was based in Norfolk. I was born in Norwich, so I'm a Norfolk boy through and through. I joined in 2007. I started on the Monday. On the Tuesday, I was on my first course in Staffordshire, and things just went on from there, really. I mean, the courses were thick and fast, and you needed to keep up with the pace. In 2007, I was in a fortunate position where a large amount of the apprentices actually joined BT or Openreach at the time. And essentially what had happened was we got to the stage of getting to the end of our apprenticeships. This is in 2009, and there wasn't a place for us in the day-to-day engineering role of the guys and girls that you probably see all the time out in the vans in the streets doing your phone lines, etc. But there was a huge gap in what was referred to as the wideband side of the business, which is really where Paul went into back in the 90s. Basically, once he got made up to a senior position, that's sort of considered the more creme de la creme of the business. And I was very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time and got pushed into this business perspective of life, which was private services engineering in 2009. It sort of ran from there, basically. My background was engineering. I was very fortunate in my apprenticeship to do and have done every single role within Openreach, from heavy cabling, so all the trunk stuff that you see when there's road closures and things like that, to all the overhead stuff. And I was also very fortunate to be trained on the copper and the fibre, which was very unusual at my time of life within the organisation. And I even gave a fibre demonstration at the school many years ago now. That's possibly 6 or 7 years ago. Not quite sure, Dave. You can probably remember that.
No, I remember it was certainly, yeah, very good.
Yeah, we did all the splicing and stuff like that. So that was sort of where things went. So like I say, the only job I haven't done outreach was polling. But in 2012, I took a position in the polling control. So I was desk-based at that point in time, doing controlling where the poll crews go, you know, where they put them up and how they put them up, and doing all the road closures and street works and stuff that's associated with that. It's a fairly big role, and my patch was pretty much the whole of the east of England, including London. That role faded out, and they moved the office role back in 2013. So after I'd gone to the polling control, so the only job I hadn't done, I got put back into the business connections world, which was basically a rebrand of the private services role. So those two, the 2009 and the 2013, are both the same role essentially, but they just got renamed because in 2013 we took on within Openreach we took on the switch bit, which was a bit. Normally we do a line, we give you the pipe, and then we leave it to you to do what you want with it. In 2013 we were actually doing the bit of kit that was at the customer end as well. So I've had a huge amount of training in BT. From all sorts of circuits and different bits and pieces. So it's this stupid thing that both me and Paul have, you know, we're in a position where we've worked for the same company for a significant amount of years, but we've actually had loads of different roles within that time. In 2014, I moved into a desk-based role doing work on when things go wrong. For my day job, so the engineering, it's when the orders get mismatched or they're basically they're in need of some help. So that was when I moved into this customer fluidity analytics, which was a very posh title that I gave myself because I was pretty much in charge of myself from that point onwards. In 2016, it was a bit of a clash of fate. I got the way the company was working changed. And basically, myself and Paul ended up working together in developer engagement, which is what was the project of what they called it, which is this 2016 Working Together Developer Engagement. And basically, they did the really silly, foolish thing of putting Paul and myself on the desks next to each other. So it just went from there, really. And it's sort of almost the rest is history. So it was just this clarification of how we know each other. Originally, actually, I remember Paul being that manager that he alluded to in 2008. And I remember him being in a room full of blokes, because I was one of those blokes at that time. And he was having a pretty tough time of things, but he was taking it on the chin as he does. So that was when we officially met. So I met Paul probably on my 20th day on the business, maybe something like that. But only as a very passing fantasy of, you know, oh, that's Paul Rogers, and oh, okay, I'll stay out of his way, sort of thing. And that was pretty much it. Obviously, when Paul was my manager, it was certainly we obviously developed a relationship over at that point, but it was purely professional at that stage. Then, as Paul has alluded to, he very sadly lost his wife and joined back the team. And as Paul has said, he was my boy. So Paul, the master and the Padawan and all the rest of it had changed positions. So all of a sudden, I had this dreary 50-year-old bloke that was useless at splice and fibre, was absolutely, completely and utterly out of it because he'd been engineering manager for 10 years. So he was completely out of the gist of how engineering worked within the organisation. It wasn't to say that he wasn't unintelligent, and he still goes to prove me wrong most of the time, because obviously he can't be that unintelligent, because of course he's a very senior officer within the Army Reserve. So of course I'm mere but a boy and can't possibly do anything wrong ever. And you can see Paul smiling, David, so you get where I'm coming from. So basically that was it. As soon as Paul and me became badged together, it's not a tale of woe. It's me and Paul spent call outs together at 4 o'clock in the morning at cell sites. We, chatted, and obviously as time goes on, we chatted and conversed. And I remember it must have been about 2014 before I even introduced myself to the radio club, David, that me and Paul had a circuit. I remember it was Durham Telephone Exchange, and we were putting in a new fibre Ethernet wideband circuit. And I had my Foundation License Now book, and I was reading through it while we were waiting for a call back from the alarm control. And Paul said, "Oh, I'm an amateur." At which point, that was pretty the turning point, pinnacly for both of us, where the rest is history, really. And obviously, as soon as I found out that Paul was an amateur, and we started chatting and all different bits and pieces, and that's really where it ended up between me and Paul, and that's sort of why we know each other relatively well. We've spent, probably the last 10 years together, on and off. Certainly the last 14 years I've known Paul. And that's really how things ended up. But it's just the last little bit where we got put on opposite, or we got put on desks next to each other in Norwich, and we got given a project to do between the two of us, and we were doing Morse code to each other. We had our headsets plugged in opposite machines, and we were practicing Morse code. So that's always the bit that I told Roger, that we while we were at work, we were managing to practice Morse code, which was fantastic. So it certainly made the days go.
But did you ever order a pizza?
No, I've just ordered my kit. Thank you for that.
There we go.
We'll see if I'm fortunate enough to win one or not. But no, that was just a project that we were given a certain time to complete, and we were free to do our own sort of thing. But me and Paul both ended up in that role by accident. We're engineers by trade. We're not meant to be really driving desks. And I've since gone on to other things, but sort of this is where my BT bit stops really. But when Paul decided to retire, so he abandoned me, and he hasn't managed to really shake me since. Somehow, I don't know how that's quite worked.
Probably know.
Yeah, he sees more of me now that he's retired. So, that's sort of us as a team, and it helps to know, obviously, going into this next bit as to how we got to a stage of being close and being together, being very friendly, David. Yeah.
Just before you do that, I've got a couple of comments, and I just want to cover those because I think it's relevant before you tell us what the Demolition Gang really does. Ricardo de Ponza says he was at BT Stone in Yarnfield. He'd been there, done that, he says. In fact, and he worked for 30 years with BT, but he'd had enough. Not a nice company to work for. That's what he said.
That's the truth. It wasn't nice at the end, David.
No. Wolfgang DL1 BJV says, I live in Verden, Germany. Royal Signals were stationed here. Caithness Barracks, I guess that is, BKS. Clive G3 XMZ, who's DL5ZZ, got me into amateur radio in 1967.
There you go.
I spent an awful lot of time in Germany, David. Recklinghausen, Munster, Dortmund, Zoster, all, absolutely loads and loads of German places. Every other year we went to Germany on exercises and ops.
So tell us about the Demolition Gang then. How does this come about? And well, maybe you decide when to tell us why it's called the Demolition Gang, because it's instead of the Construction Gang or whatever. But I won't want to spoil your presentation. But at some point, we'd love you to answer that.
No, it's literally the next question, David. So
right, I'll leave it to you.
For those of us here, this is a wonderful silhouette of Norfolk, and somehow we became the Norfolk Destruction Crew. And this is all thanks to, and full credit needs to be given to Mr. David G3 MPN. And this is how our crew, or us as a team, got to be known. And it really is. So this is now the Destruction Crew bit. First things first, it really is bigger than us. Me and Paul may be sitting here tonight as the two front runners for this, and David's emails have probably said, we're the organisers for this, and that is a certain extent to a point of that, but it is massively bigger than us. There's a few names on the screen there, and there are many more, of different bits and pieces that we've done with people, for people. We'll go on to. So
the people on there, they're the people who've helped you as part of the teams.
Yeah. So these are honorary members of the Destruction Crew. Chris G0ZBA is Mr. Towerman. If you've got anything that's anything over 20 feet, Chris is the man, really. I'm not ashamed to say he can re-rope a 60-foot, 120-foot versatile without even looking really. And me and Paul sort of both stand back and go, hang on a minute. Yeah, that has to go through there and round there and not round there. And Chris is the top man for that sort of thing. Andy's a powerhouse. Jim is perfect for technical expertise in the weather and whether we're going to get wet or not. So if Jim's turned up to a destruction crew day, it means that hopefully the rain won't fall upon us, and very rarely it hasn't. So so Jim's the man for that.
He knows some great calves as well.
Yes, he's very, very explicit in the bacon roll across Norfolk somehow. Not quite sure how he worked that one out, but yeah. Phil, G4LPP, you know, I will say a newcomer to Norfolk. You know, he came up here from Stevenage a few years ago, and he's ingratiated himself massively with the club. You know, and is a great asset to have in this part of the world. Mike DYC is our usual cameraman, as you'll see a bit later on. Steve EVA, once again, you know, general dog's body and helps. And that's all of these people. We all muck in and get things done as and when. Like I said, there's many more. I can't possibly start to even think to name them all. But it is bigger than us. So how the destruction crew was named is really an event which transpires from this particular photograph. So I'll just hand over to Paul and he can sort of do a little bit of the story as to how we got to this stage, and then we'll carry on, okay?
Well, at this point, we're, of course, at Rogers, G3LDI. We're in Rogers' garden. There's his little bungalow there, and one of his many, well, you can see 3 of his multiple towers. One of the things that Roger said before we started is that what you must do is you must chain these 3 elements together. And as you can see, Roger's got a huge, great 20-foot tall base to his tower. So when the back end of that tilted tower is very high, and you may well be able to see, it's not that easy to see, but the middle element, he didn't put the chain on, and the front element of the main top element is slid out. Luckily for Roger, as you can see it better there, yeah, you can see that the 2 elements are nested at the bottom, and the other element further along here has slid out, crashed into the ground, and luckily he'd got a tilt plate on his stepper, so it didn't, it wasn't catastrophic, but it wasn't good either. So there was some destruction went on at this point. Over to you, Sonny.
So so this is the coinciding events of how we got to the destruction crew sense. And basically what we did is lesson learned, always change the tower over before tilting it over, and never trust Roger. So so that's the very short version of the tower. We'll go through some more photos in a second. That's Roger's main tower. It's a 120-foot, it's not a stroomer, it's a west tower, 120-foot west tower. And as Paul's explained, the ground post is about 22 feet tall, which means that when it's tilted over, both the ends are at least 20 feet from the ground, meaning that it's very hard to access it. So at the point when it got to this stage, we'd managed to recover, because Roger had an antenna fault, which was the main reason for bringing the tower down and over. We brought it down, forgot the chain, but it's Roger's fault. So, you know, who can possibly blame us? Roger's fault. We tilted the tower over. It was all going so swimmingly well, so smoothly. We'd had a really good afternoon getting the tower down and everything else. And at the point where it just went over the tilter of the balance, that top 40-foot section slid out. The whole thing went up in the air. That tower section comes sliding out, and the stepper and the stub mast and the tilt plate probably did a good 8 feet across the grass before that section stopped. And luckily, due to that friction and the roping of the sections, the section didn't come sliding out completely. So we were very fortunate, but lo and behold, we've now got this massive, huge problem where we've got a 40-foot section of steel, for the lack of a better, galvanized steel, not where it should be. And this is all 20 feet in the air if we're doing any work on this, once it's level again. So the recovery was the whole big project of trying to get trying to get Roger's tower back in a position where it could be used again, because obviously it wasn't going anywhere and couldn't be used in its current position. So a 7-man crew was required, and luckily at the time Roger had a man on site that had a digger. So we utilised that for some hydraulic lifting power, because these towers they're not light on the best of days, let alone if they're 40 foot out when they shouldn't be. So as you can see here, we've got myself in the middle. You've got Chris there, and you've got Jim and the digger man there just giving a hand. This is us just recovering the beam from the end of the stub mast. This is how we sort of rigged this up, just to lift a bit of weight off, so we could in fact lift that stub off, because obviously this is all under tension and all under load at this point in time. And it didn't help that all the guy wires and everything else were sort of in our way and holding things. So this is in fact the tilt plate here. So you can see that this is just two. I think this is actually a 3 U-bolter, if I recall correctly. So this is the stub that twists on the rotator that's here. This is Roger's vertical that doesn't work very well for 2 meters and 70, and then this is what remains of his stepper, 4LE stepper. That's a fairly vast antenna, and you can't probably make that out on the picture, but there's just a slight score in the grass, and that's basically where this part of the pipe went sliding along when this all went horribly wrong. So once again, Mr. Diggerman, and that's this is the angle picture of this is 22 feet from there to the ground. So this ground post here, this is one 40-foot section. There is another 40-foot section which is still nested at this point, and then this is the third 40-foot section, making it a 120-foot tower in total. So once again, you can see that these two are nested, and this bit is not. In the background, you've got this is a 40-meter beam. This is Roger's weather station on a 40-foot tower, and this is an 80-foot tower. So you can see the perspective of all of this here. Here is Roger, the offending Never Trust Again article in the middle here. Myself. This is I don't know, this ladder is probably 20 foot at full extension. The G3 is having a good chat. Mr. Roger here and Mr. Jim. You can see what a beautiful day Jim had turned the weather station to. So we had full sunshine available as Jim turned up. So, he'd moved his weather station around to obviously provide us with sunshine. This is the offending article down on the ground. We'd managed to strip one of these out and move it. But this is actually, in fact, a 3-element stepper. And it weighs something around 25 kilos, something around that region. I'd have to...
It's a fair bit, isn't it?
But it's a very big bit of weight.
Yeah. Can I just I ought to give right of reply here to Roger G3LDI, who sent a message and says, sawn off cross dipole support, rip damage to top guy, bent head unit. I don't know, they're talking about you there, Sonny. Step IR damage. Apart from that, a great day, he said. Yes,
I was hoping that the constant call-outs would call Mr. LDI for a rhetorical response. Yes, so this all was a problematic thing. I'll just cover the sawn-off cross dipole support. It's a bit difficult to explain, but where the tower was, Roger had done a thing of climbing the tower after he'd put the stepper up. And basically what had happened is when it came to the tilt over, the dipole support got in the way. So I had to climb the tower and cut it, and Roger's never let me forget it. So, I'm not bitter or twisted about it at all. Neither is he, of course. So yeah, this is this is another angle of the 20-foot ground post and a ladder up the side just for a bit of additional support. This is me attempting a climb. So this is about 22 feet in the air and working, my way around the tower to get to a point where we can actually chock the tower. So this was our solution, because we didn't have the handy piece of chain available at this time. But basically this pipe was just to stop either of these two sections sliding out anymore. So
and can I just ask, is this something, this sort of thing is how a lot of people like me would associate with BT climbing things? Is this some of the training that you have with BT useful for this?
Yeah, so myself and Paul was actually trained as a rigger as well, so he's got his 100 feet certificate for for climbing Stoke-Hoodley Cross and stuff like that. So Paul can actually do the class 3 climbs. I'm trained to do that as well now. And it's basically, it's a vertical climb system, and there's all various equipment. But yeah, me and Paul are the trained. We go through extensive courses and retraining courses to do this sort of work. Not on amateur stuff, as you can appreciate, but obviously it's pretty cross-transferable. And BT are very lucky in the fact that they let me use their equipment to keep myself safe whilst at home.
I was going to say, I mean, we don't want to make this too serious, but in another way, showing things like this, people might just think, oh, this is a couple of guys having a bit of fun with this. This is because you are seriously trained for this sort of thing, aren't you?
No, totally. And I wouldn't... this is not the moment in time to figure out if you're afraid of heights or not. You know, this is about 20 feet in the air. You know, you can see that it sounds a bit, it's just to go over the top, but it's 3 points of contact that I've got. So I've got my hand and my 2 feet on the tower. This is actually keeping me in this position, this first hook here in the middle. And then these 2 additional hooks are actually part of this fall arrest system that you can see in the middle here. And that's basically designed that if this fails, or I let this off, or I let go all at once, this little bit here is designed to keep me to a gentle stop. I will pause for a breath. It's not a gentle stop. It's a short, sharp stop, and you can cause yourself some serious damage if without the proper equipment. So I'm trained, have got the equipment, and am allowed to use it. So, so that's where this all comes from. Obviously, support and help from the ground. I mean, what more could you ask for, and more could you support? So, so that was that. This is me still fiddling with the pole at this point. You can see that I've obviously changed positions here, and I've actually now got this hook on this part. And this actually enables me to let go completely. So I can, in fact, hands off, feet off, and just dangle on the hook, which is sort of what I'm doing here. You see, I've got no hands at this point in time because the bar is in place. I don't know why I'm waiting up there. I'm probably waiting for instructions or a cup of tea or something. Not quite sure. So you went
for the hacksaw, Sonny, so you saw Roger's crossbow off.
Yeah, so this post that's being used here was actually twice as long until I climbed the whole tower at 40 feet and cut it off. So once again, that's the bit that Roger has never let me forget.
He is putting some nice comments. As Ricardo says, don't do this at home, folks, and that's what I'm trying to say, really. These people do know what they're doing, although Roger says, I do climb that tower, David, but that's yours, so I guess we can't stop you. And he does say that we do love you, and that's from Roger to you guys. So
yeah, that's it's all tongue in cheek, and it's you know it's
but there is a serious side to this, isn't there?
Yeah,
you know,
this is not recommended for those that do not have the equipment and are not happy and confident and competent in doing what they're doing. I'm not ever going to sit here and say you're not allowed to climb your own towers at home. This is a very specific ground post that, you know, I'm out of the way of anything that could go wrong, would go wrong, can go wrong. I have equipment and arrest systems for when it goes wrong, if it goes wrong, shouldn't go wrong, but we have these systems in place for this particular reason. So I only ever climb with my equipment, with my full harness on, and et cetera, et cetera. So this isn't to be done at home. Although if anybody's desperate to get up, I'm sure we can possibly always arrange something. So a re-rig of the head unit. This is where it got bent with the force of the digger bucket trying to pick this up. This is once again us chatting about what we think we need to do and how we're going to do it. I think these pictures are slightly out of order. Here's Chris working on the end of a ladder. As you can see, he's not taking my advice, and we won't go any more onto that sort of subject. He's basically trying to sort the ropes out on the end of the step. He has a hacksaw in his hand here, trying to cut one of the guide wires off. You can see that he's cutting this. He realised that a hacksaw wasn't an appropriate tool, so I handed him a proper pair of bolt cutters, which are here. These are about 30 inches long.
I'm kind of thinking if I was doing that, I'd be cutting off the bit of the mast that my ladder's leaning against, and it'd be like one of those cartoons where you end up looking down.
So this ladder wasn't going anywhere. It was in fact strapped to the lattice work, and the tower was bolted to the 20-foot section, and it was on the front of the digger at the other end. So we were fine, but Chris was just trying to get the wires sorted. And I didn't feel confident doing that at that stage because we were still, this is in the dusks of 2019 where I'm not up to speed on roping towers, and Chris knew what he was doing. So it was a much better decision to send Chris up the ladder to go and have a look. So that's what Chris is doing. But let's say proper tool for the job, and we'll get on the tools later on. Here's the G3s. You can see that they're looking really tired now, and they're having to take a little bit of a break. No offence to any G3s that I don't know, of course. This is only meant for the jest of Mr. LDI, Mr. YLA. So yeah, they're obviously having a break. Once again, this is just a different angle. You know, we're looking at stuff, trying to figure out what's going on, all the rest of it. This is the plan. You see tea is in hand, supplied lovely by Mr. LDI. We do get well catered for when it comes to this sort of thing. Here you've actually got that didn't go very well, did it? That, in fact, that's not very well, but you can actually see now a chain in my hand. And what in fact happened is you can now tell that we've actually managed to nest this that section back in. So you can see that there's 1, 2, 3 round bars here, which means that all 3 sections have managed to recover. So here's me now climbing the 20-foot section to put the chain back on so the thing doesn't happen again. And of course, after all great victories, a nice sit down and a chat and a debrief and a tea and a coffee and a biscuit or 2 can't be too bad. And of course, Rogers, it's all very overwhelming for Rogers, so he's having to take a break and sit down on the grass, isn't he? Because I've cut his pole, which he still hasn't forgiven me for.
And now I think we're beginning to sense why you're called the Destruction or Demolition Crew.
Yeah, Roger summed it up very, very nicely. I think, you know, sawn off cross dipole support, damage to the top guy, bent head unit, stepper damaged. You know, apart from that, all good. You know, so we did all right. So this was it. That was the recovery of why we were called the Destruction Crew, and it just stuck. Let's say David MPN, G3 MPN was the man that came up with it, and it was broadcasted on the Grumpy Old Man net on 450 on one morning, and it stuck. I don't know what to tell you, David. It genuinely became a thing. Paul may even be able to tell you what was said at the time, but yeah, we just became the Destruction Crew. So this was it. So I'll say, despite the complete disaster of Roger's 4LE stepper going for a step across the grass, the requests started to roll in unbelievably. Me and Paul are still there.
Well, don't come on Monday.
Yeah, so we're not quite sure how this happened, but it sort of organically evolved. And that's so. There seemed as though there was a requirement and a need for a crew of dedicated individuals for amateur radio services in Norfolk and maybe beyond. So that was how the Destruction Crew came about, really. And that really was a case of, this is how we ended up being called the Destruction Crew, and it's all David MPN's fault. So it's Roger's fault, the fact that we're called the Destruction Crew, because it was his tower and stepper that was faulty. And then it was Mr. MPN that actually came up with the title officially. So very dubbed as the station manager for Mr. MPN. So this was really difficult, actually. Me and Paul sat down last night and tried to put some slides together. And you actually get to a point where you forget how much we've done for people. And these are literally, there's 5 here and there are more. This was in 2019, which is obviously pre-pandemic. We still weren't quite sure what COVID was at that stage, obviously, COVID-19. Mm. So we did a load of recovery work for a silent key of Bruce in Sprouston. I've got this really bad thing in the middle here, which is Guy in the old cat and around the corner. This was a job that Steve EVA put together. And this is an old G amateur. And we can't remember his name or his call sign. And I've not worked him on the air since, but he had some things that we did. And Paul lives in Old Catton, so we even went round on push bikes for that one. That was quite hilarious to push right round the corner. And I think we sorted a collinear out for him and a halyard.
Mast brackets up, didn't we?
Yeah,
done the dipole over the house and usual sort of stuff.
So we can't remember his name or his call sign. Roger might be able to figure it out. I can't even give you his name, unfortunately. Mr. G4ZBA was for some antenna work, and that's still ongoing. I'm waiting for some coax connectors from John, and that's not a dig. John's health hasn't been quite up to scratch, so it's completely understandable. But hopefully we're making a plan.
He was very reluctant to let us to do anything, John, wasn't he?
Yeah,
trying to help, but he said, "Oh, don't do that, don't do that."
After the Destruction Crew started, I think we're stuck there, David. So perhaps that was where his apprehension came from. As you can see, Paul M1AFQ's he had a fiberglass 40 meter vertical that came over in high winds and completely smashed. A newcomer to Norfolk was obviously Alan G8 Oscar G800. And he secured plan and permission for a full hex beam, etc., at his QTH up in Brisley. And he had elected to put a hex beam up, which is a big, huge object, which pretty much looks like a washing line, and we'll see one a bit later on. But I'd just like to point out that my memory can't be that bad, because I last put a hex beam up in full in 2019 with Alan, and that's relevant for a point that's coming up.
Roger has just put a little note, Sonny, saying, was that G0MSH possibly?
That might be.
The guy in Old Catton, I guess, is talking about there.
Yes, that might be.
Oh, it's Reg. Okay.
Is it Reg? Is Roger? Is Reg G0MSH? Is that right? That might be. That sounds about right.
That sounds about right. So we've got Steve on Facebook saying, was it Reg? And we've got Roger.
Well, we apologise. We couldn't remember that.
Yeah, we just couldn't remember. It was so long ago,
isn't it? I'm sure they're very grateful for what you did, though.
So that was 2019, and this is obviously a quick précis, and you know, it was pointed out that obviously just back in March 2020, when you obviously started up NARC Live, or April 2020, whenever it was, that there was a requirement for sort of news for you for all anything. So in 2020, we got a little bit better at record keeping. And I don't suppose you remember, David, but at the Christmas do for the year last year, you did a what's been happening in 2020 thing. So in 2020, we were getting better at record keeping. We have seen this list before, but as you can see, there's lots on there of major works. Small jobs, makeshift installs, repair jobs, all sorts of different bits and pieces. I mean, the second point here. So obviously, M0SYW install I'll actually highlight first, because obviously that was a very critical one as to myself and David and Steve KYA were involved in the planning at that of a very early stage. And obviously, for those that you don't know, M0SYW is blind, so needed complete help with absolutely everything, which is understandable, and and we're obviously sympathetic to that, and managed.
And you can hear him most Sunday nights coming on after the GB2RS news as well. So that's with the VHF setup, and you also put up an HF antenna, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly. So that was quite a big job for me and Paul. Steve came round as well and helped with that to install at M0SYW. Storm damage here at Jim G3YLAs. We've also done, another a main doublet supporting collinear and halyard install here. That was another big piece of work at Jim's. Here's some preventative maintenance type stuff. This is Roy G4ZBA's over in, I'll say Boardswell. I don't think that's too incorrect. His one of his halyards had jumped the pulley basically, and meant that he couldn't change his antenna. So we attempted a full climb of that, and I could only get 3/4 of the way up the tower due to the fact that the sections get progressively smaller, and I've got very big feet. So I got to 3/4. He has a 4-section, 80-foot tower, so it's 4 20-foot sections. First, second, and third section was fine. When I tried to go to the 4th section, I just couldn't get my boot in absolutely anywhere. So it was elected, and I made the decision to not go any further, just because it wasn't safe for me to do so. I managed to rig up a temporary halyard, which was at sort of 60 feet-ish. That job is still on the list. We have the list, and when we win the war, we will go through the list. No, of course not. So Roy's main tower needs to come down at some point. It's going to be spring 2022 that we attempt that, because it's been a big busy year in 2021. So all of these jobs obviously move Robert's main tower. We moved G4T UK's tower from Little Melton to Shipton. I bought a house in 2020 and fitted some masts and towers up here. We did a huge piece of work at Paul's that we shoe when we did the HF antenna talk, David.
Yes,
so we did a huge piece of work at ZBA's, and this was actually far more complicated than this one little liner that I've got here, because Paul's in a very small garden, very small plot, as we found out on the HF antenna day. And this was a question of sort of inches of planning, where we had to cut base plates down and we had to angle towers specifically so the tower tilted over in a specific place. And it was very, very much lots of little bits of planning required for Paul's. Obviously, he had my disposal and my opinions that he wasn't paying any attention to.
Yeah, that's it.
So yeah, big piece of work there, and we changed out the stepper at Paul's as well. I fitted a new mast over at Chris's, which we recovered from Heatherset. That was Heatherset to Attleborough, that one, and then obviously G4LPP's big, huge dig and hold trench, which me and Phil did, and then we did a concrete fill day, which once again the photos and stuff were available.
Yeah, I think we showed those as well. So
yeah. So you've got those. So we're coming up to the highlight reel, Tammy, if you've got that queued up. So yeah, so this was 2020, and like I say, once again, this list is not exhaustive. I was getting better at record keeping, and even realizing sitting here now about 2021, I'm still not fantastic at it. So I need a secretary, really, I think is the only answer, to be honest, David. Yeah.
Well, we forget as well what we've done, goodness knows. Anyway, we've got a video now that we're going to talk over. You're going to talk over, aren't you, and explain what happened. So
yeah, so 2021, lo and behold, a camera. So if you want to just ping the highlight reel quickly, Tammy, and we'll go from there. This is only 86 seconds, so please don't be too worried. First bit here, this is the huge move that myself, Chris, and Paul did to Scotland. This was a 60-foot heavy-duty Versatower that we recovered from just outside Lincolnshire, and removed that up to Gavin, just outside Glasgow in Scotland. So that was a huge trip. This is the next one, which is Robert's G4T UK's. This is a what's this, Paul? This is a 3LE Ultra Beam.
Yeah, it's a bit like the stepper, but it's the Ultra Beam version of it, along with a couple of other. There's a 6-meter antenna, collinear, about 4 or 5 dipoles. Yeah. There's a lot of gear went on that mast.
You can just about see the 6-meter going on now, and then the collinear is going on about now as well. So that's it. That's it for Roberts. This is then Phil's. Yeah. You carry on, Paul.
No. We dug the hole, put the mast in. We waited for a few weeks while the concrete set, and then it's build up the cush crash day 3. And what else did we? Was there anything else on the top of that, Sonny, as well?
No, Phil had already.
I think because Phil had got this other little antenna system, and he'd got 2 small tower and a big tower.
Yeah. So that was 86 seconds of 2021. So yeah. So I wasn't going to take up too much of your time because those videos had been shown previously on that live. So 2021. I actually forgot the major one off of here, which is where it says G4 LPP's antenna install. That actually meant mast install as well, because we went round. Was that me, you, Chris, and Phil? I think went round and re-roped Phil's tower ready for installation. So
yeah,
the mast bit was missing. That was a very awful day, and I didn't have my camera with me, I don't think, or didn't have it by that point. I think is more accurate. So. This is sort of 2021 as we stand currently. Once again, this list isn't the full list. This is only a little précis that we threw together last night.
Only ones we could remember. It's short.
Yeah, it's really awful when you sit there and go, "What did we do this year?" So far, the G3 LAS silent key, John Butcher, we moved his mast up to M1BXF, which is Gavin up in. He's north east Glasgow. G4T UK's this year was an antenna install because we'd actually fitted the mast in 2021, and that was pretty late in the year. Actually, I think that was June or something. We finally managed to get Robert back on the air in a full way, and I believe he's doing very well from his new station setup. So he's happy. Early 2021, we had some pretty high winds in February, and it meant that Jim suffered some damage and Merv suffered some damage. So of course Merv
had that horrible pole, didn't he?
Yeah. So
we were concerned about that pole, that adjustable pole, all along as a permanent fitting. So we had to take that down and put up a proper 20-foot alley scaffold pole, which is much more substantial. Because we really, you know, the environment there, David.
Yes. Yeah.
It's in a blind home, and you can't really have anything dangling low.
No.
So of course we went and did a.
No, I know you did a great. I went and assessed it and things, didn't I? I sorted his radio out, I think, and you guys went over and did all the aerial stuff and with lots of advice as well from Steve G0KY. You must mention him as well.
Yeah, so it's a good team effort again, but that's much more substantial now. You know, that got round the delicate nature of that retractable mast. Yes.
Yeah. So we changed out Merv's centre pole for something solid and substantial, which is much better and has been absolutely flawless for the remainder of the year. And that was an early job. That was probably March, something like that. Obviously, G4LPP's antenna install, which is shown that on the highlight reel. Another one was Paul M1AFQ's antenna installation. So we've actually done. We're almost naming it as done a Merv's. So it's a couple of T&K brackets in a very simple form. A couple of T&K brackets, a 20-foot aluminium pole, a halyard for lowering and raising wires of any description for various amounts of install. And that was fitted to the gable end at Paul's house. And as far as I know, he's happy with that. And I've just got a fabulous job on Facebook, so I'm not making this up. See, David?
No, absolutely. And in fact, while mentioning that, John 2E0TWQ mentions that you also did the cable at 2E0BA and Sonny's tower, which is Jock, isn't it?
I did. I don't know if that was 2021 though, John. Was that 2021 or 2020? I'm not too sure.
Well,
but that's another one that I've seen. That's the many more.
Yes.
See, I've completely forgotten. There you go. So that was a re-rope of a 3-section, 15-foot, 44-foot tower at Jock's 2E0BA and Sonny's. That was very interesting because we had to 2020. There you go, John. We had to go into. We had to open his shack window in order to pull the section of the mast out far enough for us to be able to re-rope it, which was fantastic because the mast just literally went through the window into the house, which was an absolutely fantastic job. So that was quite a good one, actually. So that was 2020, yeah. I did an antenna repair for Martin G8WSH over at Long Stratton. Can very often be heard on 2 meters. He had a little rotating array on the eaves of a house. And I popped in there and managed to fix that for him. Obviously, the antenna install, the VHF and UHF at Jim G3YLA's. This was to go on his main tower, separate from the array that we'd fitted in 2020. So Jim's had a major antenna upgrade over the last 2 years. Really, he's gone from a system of just a doublet to a doublet, which is now higher with a proper collinear on the top of it. So he's got a V2000 diamond on the top of that. And he's now got a hex beam, which is our next video, Tammy, which will be coming up very shortly. So this is Jim G3YLA's hex beam in a small garden. And once again, this is plus many more in 2021. I say it gets to the point where it's too many to name. And I wish I was better at record keeping, but some of them, like in the case of Martin's, I only remember that one because that was a fairly recent endeavour. That's probably a month or so ago. And some of these are just sort of pop-in jobs and make safe, and then we'll go back at other stages to sort things out properly, etc. Just in the case of Merv, that's very relevant from the point of view of a phone call to come and make it safe, and then we'll go back another time and fix it and put it back up or whatever. So the video of Jim's when you're ready, really, Tammy. So this is a hex in a small garden, and this is Jim's little tiny plot, his beautiful new beds that you can see in the bottom there that he's just had recently redone. First job was to get the doublet down, so we've just done that. got the mast over. You can see that we've tilted the VHF and UHF arrays over. That's that top bit there. We actually had to change the stub over, so that's what we're in the process of doing here, because the hex beam actually mounts on the top plate of that. Hex beam is made up of 6 separate fiberglass poles, and it's a wire element that runs round. The center element of the hex beam, the sort of tall mast thin bit, actually has all the tags for every band from 6 to 20 on it, and you run a wire from the center round the outside, and it basically acts as a 2-element rotatable two-element rotatable beam. But these 6 fiberglass rods need to be threaded in such a way that they go together properly. And once again, it was 2019 when I'd last done one of these, so I was very happy with myself that I remembered how to wire it up, and I could actually lay all the elements out, and then we've managed to stick them all in separately, as you can see here, in this 6 pattern. So there's actually wires in between those elements. We're just playing about with the strengthening kit at this moment in time, just to add a bit more wind resistance for Jim. He's at the top of the hills of climbs of Mattershall, so just anything to help the wind damage. Jim's really happy with this video because you can see the clouds rolling in and across, and he's watched it probably about 4 or 5 times now, just to look at it. It's really difficult with these videos to look at one element of it. You have to sort of keep flicking around, and there's lots going on. I know the first time Jim watched it, he was only looking at the clouds, and I went, "Oh, hang on a minute, Jim, you're meant to be looking at the aerial." So
that is a massive thing, isn't it? I mean,
it is
big.
Very significant.
When it's up there, you can't really tell. I couldn't tell when I've seen it up there, and I can't tell. I'm shocked how big that is. It almost looks like it fills his back garden, kind of.
Yeah,
thing.
it does pretty much.
Menace to put together.
Sorry?
It's a real menace to put together. It's a wrestling match in a small garden. It really is.
Yeah. So that really is the highlight for that, and that is a very large antenna installation to have in a very small garden. And Jim has got a small garden, and he won't have it any other way. That was a big piece of work. That was myself, Paul, Jim, Mike, and Phil, LPP, came across and gave us a hand. So that's the sort of who we are, what we do, and how we were formed. The next little bit is the process of how it gets to the stage of getting a visit from the destruction crew, which at your own peril, I think, is probably the best way to put it. So the requests are taken obviously via emails, telephones, or believe it or not, on a radio. This is very useful on the 450 net. Of course, if your radio installation is working, and we will be able to assist you with that and get you, every amateur should be able to get on 2 meters and into the repeater onto the news on a Sunday evening. So we should be able to achieve anything in any plot, in any garden. Certain restrictions apply, obviously. We can't do a caveat for everybody. Not everybody's got the room for an 80-meter dipole. Not everybody is allowed to have external antennas. I know there's several planning variations that there are houses that aren't allowed external antennas. So, and Steve KYA is your man for your stealth antennas and different bits and pieces. So, the who, what, where, when, and why. This sort of goes into all of that process. A virtual survey. Most of the time, obviously, we'll look at Google Earth and different bits and pieces, planning tools, and height calculators and all sorts of nonsense for, space on your plot and how long it is or how wide it is and where we can put things up, or, what sides of the house are on which direction and which antenna directions we want and all that sort of thing. It can be a very involved process. We usually do a site recce. This just involves a visit. We normally go and have an informal cup of tea and have a chat about what you would like to achieve, what are your expectations for it. We order the stores in some cases. So in the sake of Paul, M1AFQs, it was a Paul, you need, a T&K bracket, an 18-inch T&K bracket, 10 raw bolts, a 20-foot pole and some string sort of thing. So he went away and ordered those. And then once they obviously come in, we arrange a visit for destruction. So that's sort of the process as we go. All sorts of ranges, but that's the process for it, really. the equipment list. This is meant to be a funny slide with loads of things on it.
We won't get to read that, I don't
No.
We're struggling, and we've got HD here. But
and this is the point. This was the very quick list that we threw together for our stuff to Scotland. You know, there's socket sets, impact drivers, farm jacks, crowbars, angle grinders, padlocks, extension cables, hammers, bars, drills, you name it, we've got it. So this is the list of equipment, and once again, this is not an exhaustive list.
You realise you are setting yourself up tonight for lots of people.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we've put people off from our destruction rather than our wins. I should have included all the ones that have gone wrong, really, shouldn't I, rather than the ones that have gone right. So
there aren't that many that went wrong.
So this is the next one, which is with full permission before you freak out, David. So I've contacted Cassie, and she's told me that I'm happy to use her example. So this is the next one. This is what came in from David. Cassie, who's a newly licensed M7, sent a message to David saying, Demolition Crew wanted LOL, which gives us great hope before we even get going in the subject line, don't we? So this is a stereotypical example. So, hi guys, I've just passed my foundation and waiting the call sign. I have a Yaesu 450. I have an X50 VHF UHF antenna and a long wire. I'd like it up outside rather than in the loft, which is fair enough. And then I don't know if I can use the outside wall as it has a public footpath underneath, which is obviously this is very relevant with the IGNIT regulations that we've got. Any advice is appreciated. So obviously I've contacted Cassie and said we'll pop in and have a look at some point, and that's where we go. So this is Cassie's photos that she's provided, which was great with the email because it gives us a good idea as to what's happening before we even go, which is fantastic. This is obviously the footpath down the side that she's referring to. This is her chimney, and this is her gable end of her house. This is from the front, and this is also the public footpath. This is obviously the current installation of the X510 in the loft, and you can just about make out the long wire that's down there. So what we will do is we will go and see Cassie and say, hi, how you doing? And I'm Paul, I'm Sonny, we're the Destruction Crew, and what would you like? And we'll go from there, kind of thing, basically. And that's a very quick wrap-up of the whole process of how we get on jobs, how the next job comes up. And that's about it, really, from us. That's about it. It's a long way of saying it, isn't it? But, yeah, that's just about us done, I think.
Well, I think... I mean, it goes without saying, there are lots of people very, very grateful for all of the work you've done. And we've had some lovely comments. And by the way, around about 80 people have been watching this live tonight, which is quite a high number. It's about as high as it gets live, because after this, obviously, lots of people will watch the video on Facebook or on YouTube when we upload it. So that's a testament, I think, to how many people are really interested in what you're doing. Jim G3YLA says, splendid work, chaps. Luckily, the name only applies for about 10% of your work. Great skills, and a big thank you from Jim. And Sonny, sorry, from I think this is Chris. I think his name is Anubis Jackal, but I think it's Chris.
Yeah, that's Chris G4ZBA.
Yep. Yes. It helps us if you can tell us who you really are. Sonny and Paul, thank you for putting my mast up. Greatly appreciated. And Steve G3EVA says, I always thought the Destruction Crew were called into action by a bat light. Don't forget to factor in all the biscuits they eat, though. So there is a slight cost of biscuits, tea, and coffee, I guess.
Oh yes, and bacon rolls.
And bacon rolls. Oh, I see. So it depends how serious it all gets. I've got. This is a great time now. If you've got questions to ask Sonny and Paul, please ask them now, because we're coming towards the end of our show tonight. But I've got a couple of things I want to ask you, and it's not because I'm a killjoy or I'm obsessed with health, safety and everything, but a couple of things that occur to me, insurance or safety and that sort of thing. And I know, Sonny in particular, this is part of your job, is health and safety, but how do you assess something like this? And are you concerned at all that when you're on someone's property, you may be near public footways and that sort of thing, how do you assess things to make sure that they're safe and you're not going to do damage to people or property?
Yeah, I suppose you hit the nail on the head with your first comment, really, David. For those of you that don't know, my now full-time role within telecoms is health and safety. So I can genuinely sit here with a caveat of I've never done anything unsafe. And I do that as a a principle. There have been times and motions where people have done things like, you know, a certain 80-year-old climbing a 120-foot tower that shall remain nameless and LDI-less, that I don't particularly agree with. But the principles apply, and I would never do anything unsafe. I would never cause any distortions to our hobby. Merv was a specific one for that because of Merv's unique living situation, where he's in a community. What organisational run accommodation, would you say, David?
That's right, yes. I mean, it's a sort of sheltered housing kind of thing for people who have no sight or very little sight, basically.
So for the case of Merv's, myself and Steve, Steve put together a full method statement of antenna installs. Now you can appreciate, but for this particular one, it's a belt and braces job. So Steve literally put together a précis of, we would be doing this, we would be doing that, we would be doing this. So that was, you know, T&K brackets on the wall, mast height installation, you know, rig double checked, bolted up tightly, secured, and all the rest of it, and the wire for this band and that band and all the rest of it. I then did a complete risk assessment for Merv's site and filled that all out and completed all that, and even gave them a method statement of how the works were going to be completed. So there would be 2 trained and competent people on site, you know, all the appropriate PPE and stuff would be used. So Merv's, let's say, is really the belt and braces.
That was probably the most challenging, wasn't it? I mean, it took us, between the 4 of us, I think, were involved, really, it probably took us almost a couple of years. But because one of the first challenges was, of course, to get permission from the centre where he lives.
Yeah, and do you know, David, it was still fantastic because on the day that we turned up to do it, they all went, "Oh, we don't know anything about it."
They tried to stop us, didn't they?
Oh dear.
Yeah. So on the day, it was like
the maintenance man claimed he knew nothing about it.
Yeah,
and it was like all the paperwork, and suddenly he remembered.
So in the case of Merv's, it was a full belt and braces, and it even comes stupid things on the method statement, like drilling cables through walls and doing that from the inside to the out, doing an assessment of both sides, and using cable detectors to make sure there's no mains, electricity or gas in the walls. Obviously, plastic pipe these days doesn't help with that sort of situation, but
I mean, that's the kind of extreme, though, because it isn't his property, and so we have lots of challenges, didn't we, to get over both. But
it's even things like drilling the hole at a downward angle from the inside to the outside to stop water ingress and things like that.
Yes.
And you know, I know the lady on the side like really pointed that bit out to me, that she was really impressed that I'd included that, because it was, you know, you don't think of water ingress as a natural day-to-day thing. Obviously, most people don't. Obviously, it comes from a world where I'm always tasked with putting cables through walls, and we drill cables at that angle for that reason. So why can't it be applied here? So I am fortunate in my experience of life and my career. And obviously, Paul has done the same. He was, you know, a lineman for best part of 8 years, you know, a long time ago, but he's still got all that knowledge and experience that comes from doing the type of thing that we do for a living, e.g. putting phone lines in people's houses. And obviously that isn't what we ended up doing. We did business systems and things where actually installing that sort of stuff was irrelevant. You know, we didn't have to drill holes by that point in time in our careers, but we've done it and we've trained it. There's lots of things to look out for. And it sounds silly when you walk into a room, you automatically do a risk assessment of the room and figure out where the sockets are, and you look as to how the electricity runs through it and around it, and all different bits and pieces that I can't even begin to explain what goes through mine and Paul's heads whenever we walk onto any sites, new, old, indifferent, you know, and yeah, that really comes from that sort of thing, to be honest, David. So hopefully that answered your question anyway.
Yeah, no, thank you. Paul Brooks has come on, M1AFQ, says a few jobs to do, but what a great team talk. Make sure you have the gear, tell what you would like and leave it to them. A fabulous job done, is what Paul says.
Yeah.
And also from somewhere here, I just missed it. Oh, Alan, G800, says you forgot all of the club's field day events. Yeah, indeed, you get involved with that, as indeed lots of other people do. We must say, and I know you did say very clearly at the beginning, quite a lot of people though help you and support you with what you're doing here, but you're the kind of team leaders or ringleaders, as it were, for doing all this. So
well, I think it's been equated to herding cats, David.
I mean, one other thing I was going to ask you, just because it is, and you touched on it for a moment, but it's very much on our minds now since the 18th of November. people who transmit over 110 megs have had to comply with ICNIRP. So presumably now when you go to, say, Cassie's place and have a look there, I don't know whether that's built into the exam structure soon and courses, but of course it will be very soon if it's not. So this is something you also need to help people, I suppose, understand and bear that in mind as well.
Yeah, and it was great to come on the EMC call. Was it last week? Am I getting my weeks mixed up? They're all blurring at the moment. I do apologise. Whenever we
it's
did
2
the
weeks,
EMC,
I think, but we've done about 100 of these as well, so we kind of forget when who things were. But
2 weeks ago,
yes.
You know, and I had this conversation with another ham earlier on in the week. You know, it's not something to be ignored. You know, it does need to be taken into consideration. I work in health and safety, right? So my day job is regulations. Okay, I'm one of these unfortunate pedantic people that live in this world where my life revolves around health and safety. So the whole, you know, David said it. I'm still at a position, and I really refuse to budge from it, that I will not, and I hope nobody else really does the assessment for you as an amateur. It's very important that you as an amateur understand what that assessment is about. There isn't something to be afraid of, as hopefully we went through the talk a couple of weeks ago. But at least me and Paul, if we're on site, we can actually go through it with you and explain it with you. But once again, it is under the caveat that we will not be completing your assessment for you, but we are more than willing to help with the assessment as a whole, if that makes sense. So,
but give it a go and try and... Yeah, that's what the message we were trying to say. Don't just sort of think someone else can do it, because as part of your license conditions, you do need to understand what you're doing. If not, only because as well, when you make any tiny changes to your station, you need to understand it. But now, I don't want to take away the emphasis from what you two do, but it is just something that is obviously going to come in now, and then next year it will come in for HF as well.
Yeah, and it's not a downer, but like you say, David, you know, in the case of Merv, totally, 100%. You know, me, David, and Steve will do Merv's assessment. I'm not being heartless in that situation. No. And you know, and we will help those that genuinely require help. And I'm not saying that I won't. I'm genuine. You know, I'm not a person to turn down assistance to people, as you can probably tell. I genuinely go out of my way to help as many people as I physically can while I'm here. And, you know, we will assist people through that assessment. But once again, I'm not taking that onus on myself, because it's just, that's too much of a piece of work for anybody in the club.
Well, and as for the reasons we said, you need to understand it anyway, really. Yeah.
It's part of your license, your station, your license. It's not something to be afraid of. You just need to try and understand where it's coming from. And me and Paul come from a commercial ICNIRP background. So when we do radio systems, when we work on the roofs of some of our buildings or on customers' buildings, we have RF badges on, and I'll try and get them to. I'll try and get one to you, David, so you can have a look at it. So if it senses RF, it beeps and goes all wild and tells you that you're in distance of and different bits and pieces.
I would like to see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the ones we have actually record. They use an active mic record live when it senses RF, and it's based upon the theory of if you're climbing and it goes off, it starts recording you. And if you say, "Oh, I'm not paying any attention to that," then, you know, wash hands of situation, and that's your business. Obviously, I work from the safety side, so if I find anybody that's ignoring a badge, that's another thing entirely.
That would make an interesting thing one week, if I could borrow one to show here, or you come here and show it. Julian, you've got a first booking as a result of tonight. Julian 2E0DJR says, I'd like some help in putting back up my DX Commander and add 80 meters at the same time.
Cool, lovely job.
So there's a commission.
Send us an email, Julian.
Yeah, do it by email that way. It's probably best for you. And finally, I think the last comment, this is kind of wraps up everybody's feelings, really. It's from James Crawford, who's M1TS, I believe. It's really great that you give your expertise and free time to help others, and I'll echo that on behalf of everybody else in the club, really, for both of you, and I know all of the other people who do help you. I know it's a big team effort, but you two do kind of, you know, take the leadership of this, and that's very important, particularly with regard to all the safety and things. Thank you ever so much for what you've done to help people so far, and thanks from all those as well you're going to help in the future. I know it's really appreciated. and to contact you. We haven't got your email address and things, but you can contact us via this show at radio@dcpmicro.com, although I think your details are on QRZ anyway, both of you, aren't they?
Yeah,
So,
mine is just my call sign at Norfolk Amateur Radio.
True. Yeah, okay, so it's M0SYW at norfolkamateurradio.org. But just send us a message and we'll get it to you. Julian, I hope that's answered your question there. Paul and Sonny, thank you ever so much for your time tonight to explain what you do, the goods and the bads and the things that went right and wrong. But most importantly, thank you so much once again for all of the work that you've done to help people, in particular in this last 20 months or so of very difficult, challenging times for people, where for many, amateur radio has been a saviour and a way of keeping connected when maybe we weren't always allowed to go out. So thank you both very much indeed.
You're very much welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for all you do as well. Cheers.
That's all right. Well, it's all about keeping in touch and helping each other, isn't it? Thanks very much to Paul and Sonny. Hopefully that's inspired many of you as well to help. I know they would love to get your support as well. So if you do have any little things that you need to be done, drop an email either to Sonny's address as we gave, or just drop it to this show, and there's it is, radio@dcpmicro.com, and we'll be very happy to forward your messages on. So just a quick rundown of what we're doing next week at the club. Again, it's the GBTRS News is on Sunday at 7 o'clock on the repeater GB3MB. Monday night at 7:30, it's the Monday Night Net, with host this week is Tim M1MIT. And by the way, we're looking for people for December now. Soon got there. And Tim is sort of organising that at the moment. So if you'd like to run just one net on a Monday night, we'd love to hear from you on that. 8:30 on Monday, 80 metre CW net on 3.543 megahertz. And next Wednesday here on the 1st of December, Ian White, GM3 SEK, returns to us with advice on how we can clean up our shack. And as someone suggested earlier, I can't remember who it was, so apologies for that. He suggested, why don't we send a few pictures in as well? Why don't you send us a few pictures as well, that we can put that to Ian and maybe help. And there's a few people out. Can we just go quickly to them, Tammy?
I think we can go.
I think we should go back to Sonny. Although we said goodbye, he's saying, sort him out, and he's pointing to him. I think that may be a classic case of you can help other people out, but you need some help yourselves. And I think
you might be right.
My shack is absolutely pristinely perfect because I don't have one. There you go. I've got all of these antenna systems that I help. My shack is very poor. And just one last thing from me, and not taking any credit away from David. You've seen what me and Paul have talked about this evening. It's not a lot as far as we're concerned. It's obviously filled an hour. But if you can and have got a talk in you, just do it, guys. Come on, it'll make a good show and make a good laugh, and hopefully everybody will help out and do a little bit to help David out. And this was the whole idea as to why I managed to bully Paul onto it this evening. So there you go, David. Sorry,
thank you.
No, well,
it's very. I know you haven't still thin at all, because it is something we'd like from you guys at home. I mean, we do have a lot of talks by other people. Like Ian is coming from Scotland next week and do this talk to us by Zoom and things, but I'm sure many of you have got something you can talk about on amateur radio, so it's a great opportunity to plug that for us. You know, we've, as we've mentioned before, and I will mention it now since Sonny's brought it up, you know, when we used to meet normally and regularly, we would only have a talk roughly every other week. But now we fill between Roger, who does a great job getting guest speakers, and then Tammy and me filling the other weeks in. You know, we have to do something every week. So if you've got a story to tell, whether it's about amateur radio or just something to do with Lucy, science, engineering, or something like that that would be interesting to everybody, then do drop us a line. But I think that is, oh, did I finish? Yeah, I think I finished going through everything that's happening at the club. Oh, this next Wednesday was all about how to clean up our shack. So, yes, if you've got a picture of your shack and how you'd like it cleaned, it's a bit like that programme. I haven't really seen it, but there's a lady on television, doesn't she go and clean up places, people's houses? Or something. I can't remember her name. Yeah. I've seen the odd one or something over the years. Anyway, Ian's kind of the Mr. Fix-It for helping us sort out our shack. I don't think it's just like cleaning it up with a vacuum. It's really about how to organise it well and do something like that. So if you've got questions or things like that, or pictures of your shack and you want to know how to fix it, get them to us by next Wednesday at 3, and then we're sure to show them to Ian. But that is it for this week's NARC Live. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Thanks. And goodbye from Tammy M0TC.
Goodbye.
And from me, David G7URP. Take care. We'll see you next week on NARC Live at 7:30. Bye-bye.